Welcome on into the Cougar Tracks podcast, powered by KSLSports.com. I am your BYU insider, Mitch Harper. Happy as always to have you on board to the podcast wherever and however you may be listening to the show. Hope all of you had a Merry Christmas. I know I had a good Christmas with my family. My middle son, Lincoln, he got sick, and that was kind of a bummer to have a kid that's elementary age go through a sickness on Christmas, a day he's been looking forward to for weeks and months, in fact. So that was a bit of a bummer, but otherwise, really good day. I ended up traveling to San Antonio on Christmas night, and I'm here now in San Antonio, locking in to get ready for BYU versus Colorado in the 2024 Alamo Bowl and share some of my initial impressions of San Antonio, the Alamo City, as the Cougs get ready to take on the Buffs. You can follow me on X, Instagram, I guess Blue Sky as well, Mitch_Harper on all the socials, and follow KSL Sports too everywhere, and download the KSL Sports app, and you can get all my bylines and get push notifications sent to your phone with all the latest breaking news in the world of BYU sports. It was funny when you talk about breaking news, I was at a Christmas party on Christmas Eve, and obviously word was building that Andrew Gentry was going to likely be a Coug, and that news breaks during a Christmas party, and got it done, got it hammered out, and you got that push notification sent on the KSL Sports app. But I am here in San Antonio. I'm staying at the Marriott right across the street from BYU's team hotel, which is also a Marriott, and on the other side of my hotel is Colorado's hotel. And it's kind of interesting to me. The branding of Colorado stands out on the team hotel. BYU's, at least on the exterior, don't see anything on BYU's hotel that says signage that BYU is here, whereas Colorado, there's I Believe, and the Colorado Buff branding is on that hotel, which I think is kind of cool. And one of the noteworthy pieces here to this bowl game is that all of the spotlight is clearly in the direction of the Colorado Buffaloes, and BYU is probably a complete afterthought to anyone that's not invested in BYU football for this game. This is almost like a moment for Coach Prime and Colorado to really have some sort of breakthrough moment. But it needs to be noted, Colorado hasn't won a bowl game in 20 years. Colorado is looking for kind of that exclamation point on what's really been a successful season, but to, really jump it into high gear and get that 10th win, which 10 wins in a college football season, that is hard to come by. I don't care what league you're in. 10 wins is 10 wins, and that is difficult to achieve. Winning is hard, and to get to 10, it takes a lot, and BYU's already at 10. They're looking for their 11th win. But this matchup is all about Colorado for those outside of the BYU program. And, that's kind of okay for BYU because they've lived in a world at their best where they're the complete afterthought and the underdog. Think back to August and September. No one thought anything of BYU. And, well, they just only jumped out to a 9-0 start to the season. And then when they climbed to number 6 and the spotlight grew, then they had a choke job against Kansas and then lost to Arizona State as well. I love the matchup, though, and the initial impressions of San Antonio are pretty cool. Now, understand I arrived in the evening, and my Lyft ride was great. She had a vehicle that was decked out head to toe in Christmas attire. She had an inflatable elf in the passenger seat in the front row. Not even kidding. Christmas Griswold-style lights on the exterior of her car. Very festive and pretty wild, to be quite honest with you. And that was a great ride. Come in, and then I'm here at the Marriott, and got to see a little bit of the Riverwalk, but haven't been in the daylight yet. Surprisingly, very busy. Maybe I'm completely off on this, but if you're like me, Christmas Day and Christmas night, you're just at home, whether it's at your mom's house or your in-laws or grandma's, grandpa's. like you're just chilling at home with family. I was walking the streets of downtown San Antonio just to kind of get a vibe for kind of the layout of the area around me, kind of see what restaurants are nearby, things like that. There was a street where there's just a bunch of bars and restaurants lined up, and people are just going in and out of these bars. I'm thinking, are bar crawls on Christmas a thing? I don't know. Like, it's the one holiday to me where, like, I understand maybe going out to eat. That's one thing. But to just hit up a bunch of bars? I don't know. Maybe I'm just not used to that scene where I've never really went out on Christmas Day. There's not much open, but there was a lot more than I was expecting, and a lot more foot traffic in downtown than I was expecting, because I thought coming in downtown on Christmas night, there really wouldn't be much activity going on, but there was a lot. And I saw people riding three-wheeled bikes, scooters, motorized vehicles. Pretty lively scene down here in San Antonio. You can tell it's a city that kind of prides itself on these events. Even the Lyft driver who I noted was very festive. She knew about the Alamo Bowl. And that's not something significant, but I always find it noteworthy when locals know about the event I'm going into town to cover. Like, does it kind of register for the locals at all? And it did for her. And she noted that a lot of she's been giving a lot of rides to people that have been flying in to San Antonio for this game. I'm really interested to see what type of turnout there is from BYU. On my plane ride coming in, there were a handful of BYU fans and I think family members of the players. I was on a Delta flight on Salt Lake International Airport coming out of SLC on Wednesday night, and at the front desk, or at the gate, the terminal, the worker from Delta goes, "Can the Glasker family come up to check in for the flight?" And I'm thinking, Glasker family? That's a pretty distinct name. And they were in BYU attire, so I can only imagine that was Isaiah Glasker's family there. And this will be a showcase game, I think, potentially for an Isaiah Glasker to really make a name for himself, and I think he's going to be one of the best linebackers potentially in the Big 12 next season. Glasker's big time, and I think he's only scratching the surface of the potential that he has. But going back to the fan turnout, I think that there's going to be a good number of BYU fans. I still don't know, how many Cougar fans ponied up the money to go to this game outside of people that are family and just have money to spend, and they got disposable income and they're willing to blow it. I don't know how many Cougar fans are actually making the trip from Utah to this game. I don't know. We'll see. I'm curious to see the turnout, though, and Colorado remains confident that they're going to have a big showing. Those bars that were lined up on some of the streets in San Antonio, they had Coors Light banners saying Buff fans drink the Rocky Mountains or something, promoting Coors Light. Should be noted, no BYU banners inviting Cougar fans to come into these bars in San Antonio. I just always find that kind of funny too. But hey, BYU fans, they'll go to some restaurants. They'll spend some money on some food. Don't sleep on that. Yeah, they might get some waters, and that's okay. That's totally fine. But they'll show up still. They'll spend some money. This is a new dynamic, though, for BYU, participating in a bowl game after Christmas. First time for Kalani Sitake as BYU's head coach. First time for the program that this has occurred since 2013. And it's kind of, honestly, for me and my personal workflows, it's a little bit of a, I don't want to say shock to the system, but it's just something new. I'm so not used to BYU having this long of a break between their regular season finale and a bowl game, because typically it was always around the 19th or the 21st, somewhere in there. And to have, content and flying into a game on Christmas night, it's a different dynamic. BYU was at SeaWorld on Wednesday along with the Buffs, and some of the players got to swim with the Dolphins, like Chase Roberts, Darius Lassiter, Trey Alexander was in there. A lot of guys with some big personalities were in swimming with the dolphins. They also rode some of the big roller coasters as well. So a pretty fun day, light workload. Thursday is where things are going to start to really ramp up, and it's going to feel like, okay, bowl week. This is your traditional bowl week setup where you've got the last practice of the season at Trinity University. You're going to have some press conferences, some media availability. It's going to start to ramp up. And then there's going to be a pep rally, too, on the Riverwalk coming up on Thursday night, and I'm really excited about that to see how that's structured. But you can tell the Alamo Bowl, they put money into this game, and there's a reason this is one of the bigger non-college football playoff bowl games. They spend money into this thing. They're treating it like a big-time event despite being outside the playoff. I think some bowl games have just kind of conceded that they're second rate to the playoff, and I think for the Alamo Bowl, like, you don't know what the next iteration is going to be of the playoff after this 12-team format, and if you expand it out and you involve more bowl games, maybe the Alamo Bowl is factored into that playoff structure. Personally, I want to see more home field, on-campus games in the playoff in the future. That's me personally, but you can respect a bowl game like this that gives the classic old-school bowl week celebration and festivities. And it reminds you of kind of college football of the past. Seeing the players at an amusement park, that's a throwback to days gone by, and it's fun. And I think that it's going to be a lot of interesting things coming out of this BYU-Colorado game. It's going to be a huge game in terms of television audience, I believe, coming up on Saturday. And it's a good matchup. It's an even matchup. I mean, both teams score a lot of points, over 30 this season per game. Colorado coming in at 34.5, and I think BYU is going to need somewhere in that mark to win this game. Now, BYU's defense, I think, can give Colorado some headaches, but you're not going to completely shut down Shedeur and Travis Hunter and LeJonte Wester and all the weapons they've got at receiver. You're not going to shut them down completely. To win this game, you got to score at least 35, in my opinion, for BYU. You have to. And you got to pull off the upset here. I mean, BYU, the margin, the spread is growing in favor of the Buffs. And I think everyone is buying into the fact that Coach Prime is laying out a message that I think is awesome, that he is saying, no one is opting out of this game, and we're going to play, and we're going to try to finish this thing off right. When he said that back in November, I believed him in the moment because, Coach Prime, there's a lot of detractors of Coach Prime, but for the most part, when that guy speaks into a mic, he's not lying. Like, he's telling it how he sees fit. Now, you can question the way he's delivering it, but if he says a guy's going to play, they're going to play. And I'm excited to see Travis Hunter in person, Shedeur Sanders, but I think having those guys playing and that star power has created where the spread is growing heavily in favor of the Buffs because BYU hasn't faced a team that has that level of talent. Travis Hunter's a generational college football player, one of a kind. He's the Heisman Trophy winner. Shedeur Sanders is the best quarterback BYU's faced this season. They've faced good teams, solid teams, some solid players, but not elite talent in college football this year. Kevin Jennings, he played, even though many nationally would say he didn't play against BYU for some reason. They say that narrative. He's not Shedeur. Avery Johnson, not Shedeur. You can go on and on down the list. Sawyer Robertson, really good quarterback at Baylor. Nowhere close to Shedeur Sanders. So this is an incredible challenge for BYU. And it's one, too, where I do believe in the narrative that this can have some tangible impact momentum-wise and narrative-wise for national conversation for 2025. Because of the interest that Colorado football draws and no playoff game stacked up against this one, you're going to get the eyes of the nation from the college football world on this game. They want to see how Coach Prime's team finishes. And if you're BYU and you spring this upset, man, that's probably one of the biggest wins in the Kalani era in terms of shifting a narrative for the program. Because even though BYU's had a lot of wins under Kalani, and quietly since 2020, they've been one of the winningest programs in college football. I don't think enough people are giving credit to that because of, I guess, how last year panned out in 2023. But there hasn't been those wins that just kind of reshape the program and how they're viewed nationally. Because independence, just everyone thought there was a ceiling to that. Whereas as a power conference team, and you take down one that's got such high profile star power in the Buffs, that could do a world of good for BYU. And as we've seen in the transfer portal with the additions of Gentry, Tausili Akana, Purcell at defensive tackle, BYU is loading up for a pretty good football team in 2025. They could be better. And then you factor in the JUCO rules and, hey, does Darius Lassiter want to run it back? Does Maury Bamba want to run it back? You're talking about a team that could be maybe better next year. And I think that's where this game takes on massive significance for BYU football to go into the offseason, have a lot of momentum, have a lot of eyes and attention, because you need that. We see in college football that is as lame as it is, that preseason talk and hype and rankings matter. It does, sadly. You know, Arizona State, they had no preseason recognition, no preseason buzz, and they were behind the eight ball for so long because these rankings want to validate their preseason expectations, and they won't just adjust quickly. Arizona State, it took forever for them to climb the rankings. And that's one of the reasons why they only, finished at number 12 in the college football playoff rankings. So that preseason hype can do a world of good. Now you got to deliver on that if it does come, but that's kind of what's on the line here. And I think also for an 11-win season, because those don't happen very often. It happened in 2020 for Kalani Sitake's program, but prior to that, you got to go back to 2009, 2007, 2006, 2001, where it's a 12-win team. They don't happen often, though. And to get that level of wins and do it in a power conference schedule, one of the most balanced schedules BYU's faced this year, top 40 schedule by many strength of schedule metrics, it'd be an amazing accomplishment. And I think this game, if you take down Colorado, it's probably the best win of the 11. So, huge game coming up, and we'll have full coverage on KSLSports.com. Bunch of interviews, bunch of content coming up throughout the week. And on Saturday on KSL News Radio, I'll be live here in San Antonio, and I'll be talking with Matt Biamonte, who will be in Broadcast House starting at noon. Extended pregame beginning at noon for BYU in Colorado, which kicks off at 5:30 Saturday night in the Alamo Dome here in Texas. First time I've ever been to San Antonio. First time I've ever going to see the Alamo Dome. So cannot wait for that, and cannot wait for this week here on Cougar Tracks and Cougar Sports Saturday. Whole bunch of great content going to be coming from the Alamo City. So stay tuned, subscribe, leave a 5-star rating and a review, and I'll talk to you next time here on the Cougar Tracks podcast, and it's powered by KSLSports.com.